Good morning. Thank you all for being here today. We're so happy that you all could tune in for this virtual coffee hour this morning. My name is Sarah Thrall, and I'm the General and Personnel Manager for the Lexington Philharmonic. This morning's conversation is part of our new virtual series, Connect With Us. Friday mornings at 10 a.m. in March and April, we will be here sharing new videos, hosting conversations with our musicians, community members, about how music intersects with our world. Today's Connect Coffee Hour is hosted by Lexville's Interim Artistic Advisor, Kelly Corcoran. Kelly joined Lexville in this position at the start of this year, and we are thrilled to have her on board at Lexville. She is the artistic director and conductor of Intersection, a contemporary ensemble in Nashville, Tennessee. Previously, she served 9 seasons as associate conductor at Nashville Symphony and director of the Nashville Symphony Chorus. Kelly is also pursuing a master's in public health and health behavior from the University of Alabama, Birmingham. Thank you for being here, Kelly. Our guest today is Devine Carama. Devine is a socially conscious hip hop artist, community activist, and motivational speaker here in Lexington. He is also the director of Believing in Forever, a nonprofit organization serving kids. And as a teacher at the University of Kentucky, his class offerings include lyricism and leadership, hip hop, and community change. Thank you both for being here. Just a couple housekeeping notes for us this morning. For everyone watching, we'd love to hear from you. There will be portions of the conversation where we'd love to hear your thoughts or experiences. And we'll also be sharing a poll for our attendees here on Zoom. And for those watching on Facebook, we hope you will participate in the comment section. We will have someone watching and engaging with the audience there as well. For those of you watching, you can also enable closed captions at the bottom of your screen. There should be an icon that says live transcriptions if that's something you need. Without further ado, I will turn the mic over to Kelly.
Thanks, Sarah. It's great to be here with everybody today, this morning, and thank you, Devine, for joining us as well. So as Sarah mentioned, these conversations are really here to connect with each other, highlight community members and the work of Lexville, and engage in some casual conversations around topics of relevance and value to our community. So we thank you for being with us this morning, and we look forward to having a conversation together. We will do some Q&A with Devine, and throughout the whole morning, you are welcome to put comments into the chat or put questions into the Q&A at any time. And we'll also be sharing some resources and links with you throughout the morning too. So we hope you'll take the time, if you're interested, to check out those links and continue this conversation after this morning. So today we will be exploring the ways in which music intersects with community activism. That is the power of music to bring about social change, raise awareness, and through sincerity and passion, impact the world to bring about perceived positive change. Now, classical music has been steeped in a cultural and social context since its inception. And today we'll talk about how classical music has been a part of this work, and also get to know Devine, hip hop artist and community activist here in Lexington. We'll talk about his music, some future collaborations we have in store with Lexville, and we'll learn more about hip hop music and discuss what is similar and different, of course, between these two genres. But before we dive in, we would love to hear from you with a quick poll. So we have a statement to share with you, and we would love to know if you agree with this statement or disagree, or neither agree or disagree. So the statements up there: music is a powerful tool to stimulate conversation, ultimately leading to positive community change. And we'd love to hear from you with your response to that question. So Devine, thank you for being here this morning. We're just thrilled to have this conversation with you. And you wear many hats in the community as a hip hop artist, a community activist, a motivational speaker. Tell us about how all of these elements work together and how you've come to focus on this work.
Sure. Well, first and foremost, my foundation is a hip hop artist. And I think probably the biggest misconception about hip hop is when it went mainstream. A lot of people only see what is on TV. They only hear what's on the radio, and a lot of people mistake hip hop as being just a genre of music. But being blessed enough to be 40 years old, around the same age as hip hop itself, I was raised to understand what the foundation of hip hop culture was, and it's synonymous with community. It was created to be a voice for people who didn't have a voice. So activism, community service, building relationships, community engagement is in the founding elements of hip hop culture. So for me, it kind of naturally intersects my music and my work. And it was a natural transition as I got a little bit older. So for me, though it kind of seems like I'm doing a million different things, it all makes sense in the scope of hip hop culture and what it means to community and to the society at large.
Yeah, and when did you first start making music? Were you pretty young when you first started?
I was. So I always talk about 3 dates. 1988, I was 8 years old. I spit my first freestyle. And that's kind of just improv. You know, you just going with the flow. I'll never forget it. I was listening to Big Daddy Kane in my parents' basement. I was not allowed to listen to hip hop at 8 years old, but I was sneaking. My older brother was listening to Big Daddy Kane. So that's when I first kind of fell in love with the culture, the graffiti, the dance, the DJ, the poetry. And so obviously, when I got older, I believe I was 16. So we're talking 1996 is when I wrote my first rhyme. That's when I got into kind of creating lyrics myself. And then after being a young father and going away to play ball and going to college for a little while, it wasn't until around my mid-20s when I started to create music. And that's kind of when I started my journey as an independent hip hop artist.
Yeah, that's great. Sarah, I don't know if our poll is still open, but whenever it closes, we'd love to hear what our colleagues with us here are saying as a response to the poll. So Devine, our talk today, oh, okay, great. We got our response. 100% said that they agree. Music is a powerful tool to stimulate conversation. Yeah, right? So art is power and music is power, and that's why we're here today. So, this talk is about music and activism, and also these diverse genres like hip hop. And I'd like to start with the music and activism piece. So many composers historically have used music as a means to connect with contemporary issues, whether that be environmentally focused works. We have pieces like by Vaughan Williams, John Luther Adams, many classical composers that that connect with our environment, with nature, with the natural world. Or it could be the AIDS epidemic. John Corigliano wrote a Symphony No. 1 that was inspired by colleagues and friends of his that had died from AIDS that were, and so it was elevating a conversation surrounding that through that work. And composers are connecting with social justice, class struggles, all of these things. Why is it that music is uniquely positioned to help us talk about social issues?
Sure. I think that I always think back to my mom, my mother. When I was young, whenever I get a little cough, she would always bring out that Robitussin, and it was the most disgusting medicine in the world. But every time I had to take that 1 teaspoon of Robitussin, I would either get me like a tall glass of Kool-Aid or fix me a bowl of ice cream. So right after I would take that Robitussin, I would either drink my Kool-Aid or eat my ice cream, and it would kind of tame that nasty taste a little bit, get that aftertaste out of my mouth. So as I got a little bit older, I always think back to that. And I feel like leadership in a lot of aspects is, kind of putting the medicine in the ice cream, so to speak. I think approach is almost just as important as the message. I think a lot of us go into leadership thinking it's about us. Banging on our chest, wanting to be the one in charge, telling people what to do, and we get something out of leadership, when in actuality, leadership should be about actually getting your message to the people and inspiring them. So I think balance is important. And I think music, because of its entertainment value, because the elements of it can bring people together naturally, I think that's why music has always been such a successful place to start conversation, because it kind of, drops those defenses. It's appealing to the ear, to the soul. And once you kind of minister to people's hearts and minds and they feel relaxed and they're enjoying the sound of music, they can better receive the message. So again, it may be a little unconventional, but it's about getting the message to the people. And I think music does that in a great way, a great way.
Yeah, and so this morning, for those of you that are joining us, we're going to be listening to a few different pieces of music this morning. We'll hear a work of Devine's a little bit later on in the hour. We'll also hear a performance from some Lexville musicians a little bit later on. But we also wanted to share a piece of contemporary classical repertoire that is right here in the center of this conversation about how music can connect with social justice and issues of today. So this is a work by Joelle Thompson. It's called The 7 Last Words of the Unarmed. It was composed in 2015, and Joelle was responding to Black men that were unarmed that were being killed by figures of authority. And there was an artist, or is an artist in Brooklyn, Sharon Bargy, that wrote these images or put together this project that was the 7 Last Words Project, or the Last Words Project. And she focused on the last words of some of these men right before they were killed. Joelle was so moved by that he picked 7 of these men to put together into this work, The 7 Last Words of the Unarmed. He wrote the work for male chorus and at first strings and piano, and it was later orchestrated. And the structure of the work was inspired by Haydn's 7 Last Words of Christ. And each of the different movements in the work is about a different man who was killed. And the text that the male chorus sings is the last words that these men spoke. And so this morning, we're going to listen to 2 of them. We're going to listen to the 4th movement, which is Michael Brown, and his last words were, "I don't have a gun, stop shooting." And then we're going to listen to the last movement, which is about Eric Garner, and his last words, "I can't breathe." And we'll have an opportunity to respond to this music after we hear it. It's about 4 minutes or so that we'll be playing for everybody this morning. Each movement has a different style, and so I think you'll hear that. And Joelle even wove into the entire work a Renaissance secular tune, the French L'homme armé, the armed man. So he had all these undercurrents of different art interwoven into this work. And it was really him processing, what was happening in contemporary life. And then this work has emerged and taken on a life and been performed many times since he wrote it. So we'll listen to these 2 movements of The 7 Last Words of the Unarmed by Joelle Thompson, and then we'll chat about it a little bit after that. It's a very, very powerful work. And we'll share with you all the link if you'd like to hear the whole performance. And there's also a link that provides some more information about the piece that you can listen to as well. This is an incredible work, and I don't know that Joel was thinking about the audience and writing it. He was really for himself working through these things internally, but I think it is a good example of how music can help us to see people as humans, right? And to connect with people. And even in the Eric Garner movement at the end, I had the opportunity to perform this work in Nashville, and the chorus members were talking about how the long phrases were intentionally composed where people were having a hard time breathing and sustaining the long phrase during the I can't breathe section, so Joel was very intentional in the way he wrote this work. So I'd like to invite the audience to respond to this, and Devine, I'd love to hear any response you have, and then we'll go on to talk about the power of words and how that connects with music and hip hop, and then what we just heard with Joel's work as well. But do you have something you'd like to share, having heard that piece, before we dive into that?
Yeah, I can definitely relate to kind of the juxtaposition of not only using the music to inspire and speak and resonate with others, with also using it as self-therapy, or using it as a way to kind of work through certain situations within ourselves. And a lot of times those two things can be different. It could be very different. I know during the social unrest last year, the uprising of the social unrest, I feel like it's been social unrest my entire life as a Black man, but I feel there's kind of this knowledge and context that I want to share through the music for everyone, because the ultimate goal is to bring people together. But then also, as a Black man, I'm still afraid. I'm still angry. So I want to express those real emotions. So definitely as an artist, I can understand trying to use music for both. And sometimes those two things can clash. Sometimes those two things can help fine tune the message, but then also that message can help you continue to process. So I thought it was great.
Yeah, thank you. And I would like to invite the audience or anyone listening in to share any comments or thoughts that they had to Joel's work as well in the chat. So Devine, the lyrics of Joel's work are so critical, as they are the words that these men spoke. They are the literal words that they spoke at the end of their lives. Can you talk about how, lyrics and words are powerful, and how, this course that you teach at UK on lyricism and leadership, hip hop and community change, how does this, tell us about this class and tell us about the role of lyrics in hip hop music, the role of the words in the text?
Sure. So a couple years ago, I was approached by Professor Haynes in the CLD department, which is Community Leadership Development, about coming to UK and maybe doing a hip hop class. And I told him, I said, well, I don't have a college degree. He said, don't worry about it. We can collaborate. I think the work that you do in the community, the work that you do in music could be beneficial. So we began kind of building this relationship. And I told him, I said, if we're going to talk about hip hop, somehow we have to incorporate community engagement. And he agreed. And so we created the class, Lyricism and Leadership, Hip Hop and Community Change. So it is a full semester course where our class learns about not just the history of hip hop culture, but hip hop writing, but then also community activism. And we challenge them to combine those two elements. So actually the final exam of the class is they create a hip hop album. And the hip hop album has to be dedicated to a specific theme. I believe our last class, which was interrupted by COVID, was focusing on addiction and recovery. So not only is the music message oriented and uplifting in itself, but then the proceeds of the project go to a local nonprofit that resonates with the theme of the album. So it's a great course. We get a lot of students who are into hip hop culture, and a lot of students who join the class to do something different that aren't big fans of hip hop. So we get a lot of diversity, and it's really great. Kind of moving to the second part of your question, lyricism is one of the most important elements of hip hop culture. It the beats get the party going, the beats bring people together, but it's the lyricism that shares the message. It's the lyricism that can provide context and information to the struggle of poor brown and black people back in the mid 70s and the early 80s. And in sharing this information and providing this context, then people outside of those underserved communities can now understand the pain. They can now understand the trauma. And once you understand and you get that context and that information, from there, we can begin to launch this campaign of coming together in unity and in community change. But first, we have to understand the lives, the emotions of those who are being traumatized. So that's why lyricism is so important in hip hop music. And I'll even close my answer with this. A lot of people who don't understand hip hop culture, one of the things that kind of pushes them away is some of the language and the imagery. I've heard it a lot. Why does so much of the lyrics have to be derogatory, or why do they use such language? That they can make perfectly good music without the language. And my challenge to people who are kind of taken aback by the ugliness of some of the imagery in hip hop is, if you want to change the music, you have to go into the communities and change the conditions in which a lot of these artists come from. The truth isn't always pretty. So even though hip hop is about community engagement and ultimately uplifting and bringing people together, I want people to understand that hip hop was born and birthed in the struggle, in the streets of poor, underserved, disenfranchised people of color. Therefore, a lot of what you're getting is coming from that pain. Not all of it, but some of it is. So I think that's why hip hop is always risky. It's always been revolutionary, and it's always been a little different from any other genre of music.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I just also want to read out, thank you to Larry for in the chat. His response was to Joelle's piece, a real gut punch. Wow, especially stop. So thank you for sharing that feedback, Larry. Definitely a powerful work. So Devine, we've talked about words. I'd love to dig in a little deeper to the other elements of hip hop music, the beats and collaborating with your DJ, all of these things. Can you tell us a little bit about how does that composition process unfold? Do you start with the words? Do you start with the beats? Are you working collaboratively with your colleagues? Just tell us about for you personally, and then generally in hip hop music, how you've seen it work with other artists as well.
Sure. So just a quick hip hop 101. I had mentioned earlier that a lot of people outside of hip hop culture view hip hop as just rap music. But really hip hop is a culture, and it's made up of 4 basic elements. The MC, which is me, the rapper, the lyricist, the poet, but then also the DJ. That is the person that makes and creates the beats, and also plays the music at the block parties. Then you have dance, which back in the early 70s and even the 80s, it was the break dancing, the spinning on the concrete. And then the 4th element, official element of hip hop, is art, graffiti, visual art. And all of those elements were created to be a voice for the voiceless. So I'm not the best dancer in the world. Not a great visual artist, but the gift that God gave me is to be an MC and a lyricist. And when I'm creating my music, I have a collaboration partner who goes by the name of JK47. He is a DJ and a producer, and he's one of the best to ever do it. He is a true turntablist, which means he can get the turntables out and scratch and blend and mix. But then he's also musically sound. He can read music, so he can actually create the music in which I write to. So normally how we collaborate is he'll create the music first. I'll tell him, my style. He knows my rhyme pocket, so he knows what metronome to create so that I can fit into the rhyme pocket. Then he'll send the music to me, and then that's when I begin to create. I let the music vibe. I try to match themes that go best with the sonic of the production. And then, I send it back to him and he'll make some more changes and he'll send it back to me. So it's really a true collaboration. But ultimately, we are trying to make music that is timeless. 20 years from now, we want, my grandkids to listen to the music and it still resonate maybe with what they're going through, or the quality still resonates either 20 years from now, or if we could go back, turn the clock back 20 years, the music would still resonate. So that's always our goal whenever JK and I get together.
Yeah, that's awesome. And there's like DJ World Championships and all kinds of like really cool, amazing stuff if people want to dig deeper into learning about all this culture too, and the different facets of it. So yeah. So many composers have historically been impacted by other genres and integrated diverse styles into their music. We're going to listen to a piece in a little bit that's an example of that. Ed Bland, who has jazz and, avant-garde classical music, all these things together. And we, Lexville, and you are going to be collaborating on a project this summer, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But we're also about to hear this performance by one of our Lexville musicians. And so I want to ask you, how do you see the connections between classical music and hip hop music? Like, what are your thoughts on that relationship?
Yeah, what I just said, I think, and no pun intended, but classic, timeless. When you talk about a lot of pieces in classical music, my daughter is a Scapa kid, so she was a performing arts major at Scapa, but a lot of the music pieces that they studied were centuries, decades old. But she said you could still feel the emotion. It sounded like something that was created today. And that's the type of integrity that, myself as a hip hop artist has. I want to create something that centuries from now, it still has that feeling. It still can evoke emotion. And I think classical music and I think hip hop music, when done the right way, does that. So I'm a fan of a lot of different genres of music. I got a lot of different influences. And I'm definitely excited about this upcoming collaboration.
Okay, so we'll talk about that in a second, but first let's listen to a performance by some Lexville musicians. We're going to listen to One on One for clarinet and bassoon by Ed Bland. This is performed by Erin Fung and her husband, Christopher Sales. And they'll give a little intro to at the beginning of the video.
We'd like to take a moment to talk about the piece we're about to play. It deserves a little bit of explanation because it is such an esoteric and interesting part of the history of Western and pop music.
Ed Bland's music has been sampled by artists including Beyonce, Cypress Hill, Fatboy Slim. It's been described as hip-hop without words, self-described as urban classical funk, and is the perfect synthesis of West African drumming, classical music, and jazz music.
Absolutely. Some of his other pieces, if you're interested in Ed Bland, are his Chamber Symphony, which was performed by the Boston Symphony and the St. Louis, Detroit Symphonies. But also he was part of a documentary called The Cry of Jazz, which is a very interesting watch as well.
Yeah, if you want to learn more about that, that film was produced in 1959. And a critic described it as being one of the first films produced by Black Americans that challenged the humanity of white Americans.
That's right. We're going to play a little demo for you. This is sort of what we call Stockhausen funk, or maybe Schoenberg funk. It's really its own thing, though. It's like Ed Bland funk.
Thank you so much for listening.
So if any of you would like to learn more about Ed Bland, Sarah's going to include a link where you can learn a little bit more about him. He was born in 1926 and died in 2013, started as a jazz clarinetist, and then upon hearing Rite of Spring by Stravinsky, really just started to embrace these classical influences as well, and that had a huge impact on his output as a composer. So bravo to Erin and Christopher for that great performance. Now, Devine, you're going to be collaborating with Erin on a project, and you're also collaborating with Lex Phil on a program later this summer. What interested you in collaborating with the Lexington Philharmonic?
So I've been trying to do this probably for about 2 or 3 years now, and so I'm just ecstatic that we're finally able to make it happen. I think it's just the beginning. And to answer your question, honestly, community, our youth is what inspired me to want to do this collaboration. Artistically, I loved seeing artists like Nas perform with the orchestra, who's one of my favorite artists when I was coming up as a kid. So artistically, I always love seeing cross-genre collaborations. But for me, I just thought about how many kids in Lexington don't know the true essence of hip hop culture that could learn about it and be inspired by it, and would never even think of engaging hip hop culture if it weren't for this collaboration. And the same with classical music. How many kids right out, outside my office here in Castlewood or in the East End area that we serve on a weekly basis, how many of them may be inspired to get into classical music, but otherwise may not have a connection to it if it wasn't for this collaboration. So I think this is just another avenue to bring people together, to open our youth's eyes to different things. And that's what led me to want to do this. So I'm super excited about collaborating with the song with Erin and doing a show with the Lexington Philharmonic and changing some lives, hopefully.
Yeah, I love this emphasis on community, because I think that's kind of why we're all here, right? Like, to contribute to our community and work collaboratively and connect with people, and to your point of changing lives, right? Hopefully in a positive way. And I also love this idea of art that is timeless and that will transcend generations, but also that is really relevant and meaningful to the time that we're in too. And I think that's what's really awesome about the work you're doing. And so let's listen to one of your songs because we haven't heard your music yet. And I want to know first, we're going to listen to Beat of the Heartland. So that's the song we're going to hear. But first, tell us about generally what are some of the key messages in your music, and then specifically what we're going to hear in this song.
Sure. So generally, it kind of goes back to those clashing elements that I spoke about earlier. For me, there's this lyrical integrity. I come from battle rap culture, where I used to go to different street corners and battle other rappers for, who had the best rhymes. So for me, it's always maintaining that technical skill level when it comes to rhyming, alternate rhyme patterns, parallelism, metaphors, similes. But then the other part, especially as I've gotten older, is, okay, I can rap really good. That's cool. But 20 years from now, will that matter? Maybe. But I think the messaging, what am I saying in my music, will matter more. So I think as I've gotten older, I've focused a little bit more on that. In regards to Beat of the Heartland, this was actually a very personal song. I'm not even sure how much it will resonate with somebody who isn't from Kentucky. This is about growing up in Lexington. This is about being a hip hop artist in Lexington, in my environment, in the neighborhood I grew up in. This is about people that impacted me on my musical journey up to that point. I believe this song came out in 2014. And this is just a song about that encompasses my love and my passion for music, for Lexington and the state of Kentucky. So hopefully people enjoy.
Yeah, and the title of our collaboration concert, which is coming this summer, is going to be Beat of the Heartland, because I think, again, that focus on Lexington. So, okay, yeah. Let's share it with everybody. Let's listen.
Got to give them something a little more, DJ Brooklyn, this is for you. I had to give you something to play on Friday nights. Yeah. It's for Lexington, Kentucky. Let's get it. Everybody, welcome to the bluegrass, Lextown, Kentucky, where them dudes spit the true raps. Jews haven't sent truth, never embellishing the fusion of the elements from club to the boom bap. Been dropping knowledge since they tore down the projects. Bluegrass, Asphodel, and Corcoran, Charlotte. I remember Smithtown days so crazy. Mono performed on stage, I was hollering at Stacy. Parking on Vine and hit the roots all day. Or at least got a fish sandwich and a funnel cake. And since we in the last days, the tech spark. Hit Super Sunday, better bounce before it gets dark. East side bread, south side raised. Lexington, Kentucky is the place that I stay. Big Blue Nation, man, I always got my team on. Tell Coach Cal to make this the Cat's theme song. Lexington, Kentucky, what my queens like. And all my fellas like. It's Devine Carama representing on the mic, and I promise to do it right, cause I love my KY. To all the little girls, you're not a bitch, you a queen. To all the young brothers, remember that you a king. Play ball, be a doctor, go to school, chase your dream. When you make it, you scream. I love my KY. Shouts to the brothers, Corey and Brandon Dunn. I remember you and Q wouldn't save Charles Young. Shouts to Anthony Everett, who came in from Texas. Spreading God's word to the street, he's such a blessing. Shout to Mike Robinson, invite me to his place in 05. You and Derek showed me the meaning of total grace. 5 years later, that became your church's namesake. Volley back and forth with the devil like you James Blake. Shout to Shiesty for helping me get better, and Deacon teaching me balance, substance, and clever. Much respect to Johnny Johnson teaching me the culture, how to stay the course in a room full of vultures. Shout to the Muhammads, I can't thank you enough. And Walter Tunis and the Herald Leader, always showing love. God gave me a gift to paint my art in the street. We the city that make Kentucky's heart go beat like Lexington, Kentucky, what my queens like. And all my fellas like. It's Devine Carama representing on the mic, and I promise to do it right, cause I love my KY. To all the little girls, you're not a bitch, you a queen. To all the young brothers, remember that you a king. Play ball, be a doctor, go to school, chase your dream. When you make it, you scream. I love my KY. If you rap Southside, let me hear you say. Let me hear you say. Let me hear you say. If you rap Northside, let let me hear you say. And if you rep East Side, let me hear you say. Let me hear you say. And let me hear you say. And if you rep West Side, let me hear you say. Let me hear you say. I love my KY. Lexington is known for the hoops and the horses, but also a home for when the truth is recorded every weekend. We whining, it ain't nothing to do. When them clappers go blow, we got something to prove. But it's power in my words, I try to reach them through the booth. Present power of words, I try to reach them in the schools. Unlike y'all, I live what I write. When I'm spitting through the mic, I'm trying to give these kids light. Like Lexington, Kentucky, what my queens like. And all my fellas like. It's Devine Carama representing on the mic, and I promise you do it right, cause I love my KY. To all the little girls, you're not a bitch, you a queen. To all the young brothers, remember that you a king. Play ball, be a doctor, go to school, chase your dream. When you make it, you scream. I love my KY.
Bravo, Devine. That's awesome. I love that. I love my KY. It's awesome. Yeah. Lexington,
I appreciate it.
To have you as an artist and a community advocate, and just bravo, awesome work. And I want to invite the audience again, if there's any comments or questions for Devine, please feel free to put them in the chat in the Q&A. So Devine, tell us about Believing in Forever here in Lexington. You're the director of Believing in Forever. Tell us about this organization and the work that you're doing in the community. Oh, and you're muted.
Sorry about that. We just recently had our birthday. We just turned 7 years old. We started back in 2014. Ironically enough, 2013, I had a teacher from Bryan Station Middle School reach out to me and said that I'm having issues with a few boys in my class. All of them are fans of your music. Would you ever consider coming in and speaking to them? And at that time I hadn't did anything like that. And I said, sure. So I showed up at the school, and that day ended up being life-changing for me. That coupled with doing some benefit concerts a couple of years prior, me kind of aging, I just started looking at life different. I said, you know, instead of just rapping about positive stuff, I probably need to start dedicating my life to at least trying to do my part to giving back. So that's kind of the beginning, what led to Believing in Forever. And in the last 7 years, we've just been blessed to do so much. You know, we do a youth coat drive every year. I've been able to travel around doing motivational speaking. We do youth open mics. We do hip hop workshops. We've done tutoring sessions. We got the Luna Library here at the Castlewood Center, or at the Loudon House. So we're just always looking at ways to try to inspire young people to engage community and be leaders. You know, growing up, I used to always think a leader had to be a specific thing and fit in this box, in this template. And so I grew up kind of wondering if I could even make a difference because of this template, you know, that society kind of pushed on us. And so as I got older, I realized that leadership's just about you taking advantage of whatever situation you're in to make a difference with those around you. So I want to inspire other young people who might be growing up feeling like, you know, I don't know if I'm the right race. I don't know if I got enough money. I don't know if I'm old enough, and they're questioning whether they can make a difference, when in reality, they already have everything they need to be a game changer. And we just try to inspire them towards that, figuring out their path. So this is definitely the number one thing in my life. I love music. I still create music, but our community work is number one for me.
Yeah, thank you. And I just want to say, you know, I know everybody at Lexville is really excited about the collaboration and opportunity to work with you this summer. And we're really grateful for you and, you know, the chance to work together on this partnership, all that great stuff coming down the pipeline. So, you know, as we begin to make our way towards the end of our hour together, I do want to share some additional resources with our audience and listeners. If you're interested in kind of exploring some more about orchestras and classical music and activism, there's just a few links that we wanted to share with you. There's an activist orchestra called The Dream Unfinished, and they are in New York. They were created in response to the Black Lives Matter movement, and are, creating interesting programming that is really advocating for women, people of color, other marginalized communities, and connecting with things like voting rights, all kinds of stuff. So that is a really interesting example of how some orchestras are responding to different contemporary issues. There's an article that was in The Guardian in 2015 about Greenpeace and how they were using music as a mechanism for activism. Contemplating pieces like the Vaughan Williams Symphony No. 7, the Antarctica Symphony, John Luther Adams in The White Silence, all about Arctic drilling and thinking about music as a response to that. The Sphinx organization is an organization devoted to transforming lives through the power of diversity in the arts, and they do a tremendous amount related to advocacy and activism. There's also the Women's Philharmonic Advocacy that does a lot of work to support female composers, female conductors, female orchestral players, and just a few more. There's an interesting article in New Music Box that is really contemplating this idea of like, is it the role of artists and musicians to be activists and to speak up and to, be a voice or not? And really, it's an interesting discussion surrounding that, and looks at orchestras like the Refugee Orchestra Project, which was created by a colleague of mine. And so just lots of interesting resources if you're interested in digging deeper. And then one final one, an interesting TED Talk that talks about art as activism, and this idea that, if when the world is burning, the arts can be a way that we can survive and communicate and really transform and have a voice in the midst of everything going on. So that's a lot of resources, but we just thought it would be fun to share some of that with you all if you're interested in digging deeper. And, as we wrap up, I don't know if there's any final questions or comments for Devine related to his work in the community in Lexington. But Devine, do you have any final comments or thoughts you'd like to share with everybody? And I know we'll be sharing more with the community soon about our partnership that we're doing this summer, but anything else you'd like to share?
Yeah, one question I get a lot, and we just started a new partnership with the University of Kentucky. So I've been emailing a lot with some current students. And one of the number one questions I get, and this is from students of all walks of life, white, black, left side of the political aisle, the right side, is how can I make a difference? But what can I do? And one thing I tell people is to just kind of figure out what their unique gifts are and just try to lead from there. My wife is behind me. I'm sure you've seen her, walking behind me. She's getting some paint kits together for, this art event she's going to be doing with some young people in the next week or so. She has found her purpose in not just art, but in mentoring. And she's out here making a difference. Same goes for me. I'm a musician. So how can I make an impact through my music? You got to figure out what your unique skill set is. It might be education. Maybe you're a great communicator. And just figure that out and just lead from there. Everybody can't be the person with the megaphone. Everybody can't do the same thing. So just figure out what your role is, and understand that all of it is vital. We need everybody. That's what community is about. Not just embracing the uniqueness of yourself, but also embrace the uniqueness of other people and their unique gifts. So hopefully that speaks to somebody. And like you said, I am super excited about our collaboration coming up and look forward to sharing more details soon.
Thanks, Devine. And Donald Mason put a comment in the Q&A. He said, much love and respect in your growth as a musician, activism, and leadership. Thank you for believing in forever. So thank you, Donald, for sharing that comment.
Appreciate that Donald, ex-director at the Lyric Theater, and a very, very talented musician. A lot of people don't know that. He's one of the, the better musicians in the last, decade or so in the Lexington area. He's moved on to other things, community oriented, but I appreciate that, Donald.
And then Dawn also said thank you. So thank you, Dawn. Yeah, thanks. So thank you, Devine, for sharing your time with us today. I think I'm going to kick it back to Sarah to bring us home at the end of our hour. But we look forward to being with everybody in the community for future conversations.
Yeah, thank you both so much. Thanks to Devine and Kelly for this incredible conversation this morning. I hope that it's one of many to come of conversations and collaborations. Also, I want to say a bravo and thank you to Erin and Chris for that beautiful performance of Ed Bland's One-on-One. For those of you listening, that performance will be on our website and YouTube, so you can go back and listen to that again and again. Thanks to everyone who tuned in on Facebook and Zoom. Next week, we will be returning back here Friday at 10 a.m. where Kelly will be talking with members from the Lexville Viola, Cello, and Bass section about some of their favorite Lexville moments and favorite repertoire and hobbies. So it'll be a fun conversation. We also want to take a moment to thank all our amazing supporters and members of Lexville who make our work possible. If you are in a position to support us, please consider becoming a member today of Lexville for as little as $5 a month. You can visit our website at lexville.org to make a gift. And lastly, I'm sharing a link to our community survey in the chat. And we would love, it just takes 3 minutes to fill out. We would love to hear from you all about what you would like to see from us for upcoming programs and concerts. We always love hearing from our community regarding that. Thank you to everyone again, and I hope everyone has a great weekend.
Let's get it. Everybody, welcome to the Bluegrass, Lexington, Kentucky, where them dudes spit the true raps. Jews haven't sent truth, never embellishing the fusion of the elements from club to the boom bap.